checking their mail in the morning, might be picking up an envelope full of anthrax. And I would challenge our critics to tell us how that can be explained away innocently. Now, all of this, of course, raises enormous issues, because 9/11 has changed the world we live in. Historically, it must be the biggest event for 50 years. And obviously, if we ask the question, cui bono, who benefits from this, it becomes clear who would have the motive to carry out such an attack upon America. And in fact, these people have made no secret of their intentions. The project for the new American century, the neocons, in September 2000 produced a document called Rebuilding America's Defences, in which they recognised that to fulfil America's voracious appetite for fuel, they would need to control a gas pipeline across Afghanistan, but they would need to control the Iraqi oil supply. But these people were wise enough to realise that the good people of democracy did not easily accept wars. What they recognised that they needed was a cataclysmic and catalysing event which would get the American people on their side, like a new Pearl Harbor. This document, as I said, was written a year before 9/11. It advocated the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. And we contend that 9/11 was the new Pearl Harbor, used to inflame American public opinion, used to justify invasions that would not otherwise be justifiable. But at the same time, of course, it's not just the events in the Middle East that have been affected by 9/11. There's also the events at home in the US and the UK. You've seen the whole spate of legislation, the US Patriot Act, the anti-terrorism acts in the UK, all of which have not just simply reduced civil liberties, but have hit at the very heart of the kind of liberties we take for granted in a democratic society. We have seen people being imprisoned without trial. We have seen Britain being used as a stopping-off point to take so-called terrorist suspects away for extraordinary rendition, or to use a more plain term, torture. So it's absolutely vital that we campaign to demonstrate to the people that 9/11 was an inside job. Because, as I said, everything that's happening at the moment is as a result of 9/11. So if we can prove in many people's minds as possible that this was in fact concocted by traitors within the American government, the whole reason for those assaults on our liberty and our democracy are all proved to be false. Some people say that 9/11 is in the past, but the results of 9/11 live with us every day. We only have to look at the media coverage of what is going on in Iran at the moment to see that there is no lack of will on the part of elements of the US government to want to invade yet another country in the Middle East, despite the disasters in Afghanistan and Iraq. And this is why 9/11 is so vitally important, because public opinion is clearly against any kind of military action against Iran, particularly in the UK. However, I believe that they will try and use the same tactics they used prior to the invasion of Iraq, a false flag operation, to try and implicate Iran. And given the scale of what they want to do in our country, we have to prepare ourselves for the possibility of some kind of dirty bomb operation carried out by elements of the US intelligence service, but of course blamed on the Iranians. And there are interesting parallels in the run-up to the war in Iraq. As soon as the euro became available as a currency, Saddam switched his oil reserves from dollars to euros. When he first did this, the euro was worth 0.8 of the dollar. Of course, it looked like Saddam was going to wreck his own economy, but the euro, of course, grew in strength, and other countries began to think about doing something similar, switching their oil reserves from dollars to euros. It was, of course, at this point, in 2001, that we began to see constant US-UK bombing of the so-called no-fly zones in Iraq. That, of course, was quickly followed by the land invasion of Iraq in 2003. At the moment, the Iranians are planning to open an oil bourse, an oil stock exchange, on the 21st of March 2006. And that will sell oil in euros, not dollars. This confers an enormous economic advantage to the euro. People who own the American debt in dollars will quickly want to sell those dollars if they start going down. And this, of course, could lead to hyperinflation and economic collapse in the US. Those in charge simply cannot allow that to happen. So I believe that they will be tempted to try and let off a bomb and blame it on the Iranians to try and justify an invasion of Iran so they can gain control of the Iranian oil supply. The seriousness of 9/11 is the fact that 9/11 is not an isolated incident. It is not one example of false flag terrorism. It is, when you look at the evidence, the continuation of other acts carried out by Western intelligence services and blamed on insurgents and so on to try and undermine their support and to justify military action against them. False flag terrorism is flourishing within the UK and the US in particular in order to make us scared and therefore grateful for these so-called added protections to our security that result from legislation passed. But of course that is not the case. This legislation does nothing to stop terrorism. The invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq have simply acted as a recruiting sergeant for Al-Qaeda. It is therefore absolutely vital that we expose the lie of 9/11. And the time to do something is not in 5 years' time. The time to do something is now. Because if we don't act now, the very avenues of protest, the very right to protest, the right to free speech, will be taken away from us, so there will be no conditions in which we can protest.